This video dives deep into the shadowy world of the Nigerian Mafia in South Africa, how they first emerged as nightclub security enforcers in Johannesburg before leveling up into a powerful dope-pushing syndicate. We trace their evolution from the streets to the digital underworld, where ruthless groups like Black X now operate in Cape Town, scamming pensioners across the globe through elaborate romance scams. Now this episode pulls back the curtain on the rise, reach, and ruthless tactics of the Nigerian Mafia in South Africa. Since the 1980s, Nigerian organized crime groups have been spreading around the world. They first gained a strong presence in Italy, and by the 1990s, they began to take root in parts of South Africa. There are a few reasons why they moved: corruption and poverty in Nigeria, lack of job opportunities, and the need to escape law enforcement crackdowns at home. Many skilled Nigerians left their country in search of better lives, and along with them came some individuals involved in organized crime. Nigeria's oil boom in the 1950s brought wealth but also corruption. Then in the 1980s, the country faced bad economic downturn. Corruption got worse, and these combined issues pushed more Nigerians to move abroad. Some of the criminals who left Nigeria found it easy to settle in South Africa, especially after the end of apartheid in 1994. Now, Nigeria had helped South Africa in its liberation struggle, so South Africa was more welcoming to Nigerian immigrants during its transition to democracy. At the same time, South Africa had its own crime networks, especially in Johannesburg. One such group was known as the Bouncer Mafia, a group of nightclub bouncers, mostly former white working class men from the apartheid era with boxing and military backgrounds. These bouncers started as simple security staff, but over time, they began extorting club owners and taking over parts of the dope trade. In the early days, recruitment of being a bouncer was often a matter of who you knew, but a solid knowledge of boxing was a non-negotiable. Organized companies were virtually non-existent until the late 1980s, when the increase of club numbers forced bouncers to band together. Small crews of 5 or 10 men emerged, ready to back each other up when situations spiraled out of control.
We were very strong. I'd say we were the strongest crew this Johannesburg's ever seen. And we just basically took most of it over by force.
We were always at the clubs, so it made sense to work and get paid for it and then have the drawl at the same time.
Everything was there, the drugs were there, the money was there, the woman was there, everything was there.
We weren't an organization, or we weren't part of a bouncing group at that stage. We were just good, loyal friends to each other.
We called it elite security. We supplied nightclubs with bouncers and with doormen. We had over 100 people working for us. We ran the whole of the northern suburbs. Let's just say Diplomat had bouncers at a club. What we do is we just send our guys there. Our guys would go there and go and make trouble and that, and we'd just say to explain to the owners, listen, the guys that you got working here aren't the right guys for the job. Best you employ us and the trouble will stop.
By the early 2000s, the notorious elite was at the top of the protection bouncer rackets. However, as time marched on, their influence began to slow down. The once formidable power structure started to crumble when the predominantly white bouncer bosses began reaping lucrative rewards from protection fees and dope ties. And as well as rampant dope and alcohol use compromised discipline, while some of the bouncers, hardened by their army backgrounds, became aggressive. Essentially, the bouncer mafia that once ruled the night began slacking and dropping the ball. In a dramatic shift, Elite eventually pivoted its recruitment strategy, increasingly hiring black bouncers. This marked a departure from their original pool drawn solely from poor, working-class white communities. Migrants from Nigeria, the DRC, Mozambique, Namibia, and other nations gradually became the backbone of the new era in nightlife enforcement. Now, by the late 2000s, clubs themselves began hiring more black bouncers, especially immigrants from Nigeria, DRC, and other nations. These newcomers were called Nigerians, even if they weren't all from Nigeria. They were often hired because they worked for lower pay and were seen as less violent, but were more physically intimidating. Now this helped them blend into the nightlife security scene without any problems. Some of these Nigerian bouncers helped open the doors for Nigerian dope dealers to enter the clubs, especially in Hillbrow, a fast-changing part of Johannesburg. However, Nigerian groups did not completely take over the dope trade in the same way the original bouncer mafia had. The dope market itself was changing, and dominance of the old mafia began to fade as social and racial changes shifted the structure of crime and policing in South Africa. In Cape Town, Nigerian syndicates took a different route. Instead of entering the gang-controlled Cape Flats, they started in the wealthy and safer area of Sea Point, where they got involved in dope dealing and sex trafficking. But they were eventually pushed out of Sea Point by law enforcement and neighborhood watch groups, and they moved their operations to the northern suburbs of the city, to places like Milnerton and Brooklyn at first. One of the most well-known Nigerian crime groups to emerge is Black X, which originally started as a student group in Nigeria in the 1970s. It later turned into a global criminal network. In recent years, South African police, along with US authorities, arrested several leaders of the Black X group in Cape Town. They were accused of running online scams, especially romance scams, where they tricked elderly people around the world into sending them money. They also carried out business scams, stealing millions of rands from companies. Today, Black X members are known to operate mostly from Tableview, a suburb on Cape Town's west coast. They pose as wealthy retirees or lovers online, using fake identities to scam victims out of their savings and pensions. This shows how Nigerian organized crime in South Africa has become more sophisticated and global over time, shifting from dope trade and security work into high-tech fraud.
Spoken to some private investigators today. They were telling me that it's not unusual and that they deal with these cases almost on a daily basis. But what they're saying is, Shahan, and just to give you some context, is that often widows and people, women who have been newly divorced, they are then, scammed by these people because they go onto these dating websites because often it's older women, they're too shy to go out and date socially and openly. So they go onto social media, onto these dating websites. They meet these men on these websites, and these guys then promise them the world. And then what happens is that they get very, very familiar with these women, and they kind of sort out women who have inherited a lot of money, women who have big pensions, and women who have lots of savings. And that's when they then say to the women, you know what, I want to come to South Africa to come and be with you, to come and spend the rest of my life with you, but I actually cannot afford to buy a ticket to come to South Africa or even to the US or wherever they are. The women then say, okay, fine, I will send you money. And then they'll say, oh, but I need to pay for a visa. The women will then send them more money. But at the same time, Shahan, what they do is they then compromise these women's emails and also their bank accounts. And they siphon off not just hundreds of rands, but millions of US dollars. Now, in this particular case, we're only dealing with alleged crimes having been committed in the United States of America. And that is why the FBI got involved and sought the help of their South African counterparts. And the 8 men were arrested in a place here in Cape Town called Parklands in the Tableview area, where I've been told that it was a multidisciplinary operation, including the Hawks, the local Metro Police, the K9 unit, as well as crime intelligence.
For the most part, Nigerians are middlemen when it comes to the dope trade. They move it. but get it from either South American cartels or in the Middle East places like Afghanistan. Nigerian syndicates in South Africa operate through vast multi-layered dope supply chains, regional and international networks that shift depending on the dope in play. Now, coke is one of their flagship products, trafficked heavily in major cities like Johannesburg, Durban and Cape Town. And where does this dope come from? The cartel heartlands of South America, Brazil, Colombia or Peru. Working hand in glove with powerful South American cartels, Nigerian traffickers orchestrate a transcontinental operation. West African coastal nations, Nigeria, Ghana and Guinea-Bissau, serves as key transit hubs, staging grounds where the cocaine is repackaged and rerouted south. From there, the dope slips into South Africa through multiple channels. International flights carried by human mules, shipping containers hidden in plain sight, and false compartments buried deep in cargo and luggage. Though coke is their stronghold, Nigerian syndicates also trade in H, though with less dominance. Now in this arena, they play second fiddle to entrenched local and East African networks. You see, H travels a different path altogether, flowing from the poppy fields of Afghanistan along the southern routes. Now it flows from Afghanistan to Pakistan or Iran, then East Africa to places like Kenya, Tanzania and Mozambique, before finally crossing into South Africa. Mozambique is a key entry point where shipments are quietly offloaded and funneled down to South Africa by road. Now, Nigerian groups often purchase the H in bulk from East African suppliers. Then in the city, they cut it, mix and distribute it, sometimes blend it with other narcotics to stretch the product and boost their profits. But it must be said, only a small fraction of Nigerians are involved in criminal activities. But as it's often the case, the actions of a few cast a long dark shadow over the entire community. And in South Africa, that shadow has fed tensions, mistrust, and resentment. In a diplomatic move, South Africa recently announced that Nigerians can now enter the country visa-free, an effort to strengthen ties, boost trade, and promote cross-border business. But not everyone welcomed the news. For many South Africans, it felt like an open door for trouble. Critics feared that it would give Nigerian syndicates already operating in the country even more freedom to move, expand, and disappear into the crowd.